Hello, everyone. I want to welcome you today to our nominee town hall for our slate of directors and our chair-elect. My name is Angelica Melendez. I am the immediate past chair of NACAC and chair of the nominating committee. With me, I'm going to throw it over to Heather so she can introduce herself before we get to our nominees.
Hi, everybody. My name is Heather McGee. I'm the Director of Governance and Volunteer Relations at NACAC. And one of my responsibilities is being the liaison for the nominating committee. And I'm happy to be here today and have this conversation with our wonderful slate of candidates.
So we're going to go ahead and kick it off. Our nominees are going to introduce themselves, their titles, their day jobs, and where they're located. But also for a little bit of fun, they're going to tell us their theme, their walk-up song, and why they chose that song. So I'm going to go ahead and kick it off with Tahara.
Hey, hello everyone from wherever you may be joining us or watching this or listening to this town hall. I am Tahara Jordan Crawford, candidate for the chair-elect position, and my day job is as a member of the undergraduate admissions team at Columbia University in the city of New York, but a proud resident of Newark, New Jersey. And my walk-up songs with an S, I'm sorry, I'm breaking the rules already, because I feel like there's different moods. So if my mood is to get me ready and excited and empowered, I'm going with No Doubt's 1995 hit, Just a Girl. Shout out to Gwen Stefani. We heart you. That's telling my age. And then if I really am in the mood and I'm ready to take on some serious battles, I'm going with the best poet to ever do it, Gil Scott-Heron's 1971. The revolution will not be televised because even now, decades later, it is still relevant.
All right, good morning. My name is Jonathan Farrell. I'm the Director of College Counseling in Atlanta, Georgia, although I'm close to you right now because I'm in New York, holed up in my hotel room, so that's why this little glare is here, but I'm here for an alumni event. But my walk-up song is easily September, Earth, Wind, and Fire. Because I can't think of a single time where that song comes on, whether you're on a plane, whether you're at a conference, whether you're at a bar or a club, and there's not like a tingle in your feet or wiggle in your seat. So it just makes me feel good. And I think in these times, we need lots of things that make us feel good. So it has been a long time favorite of mine, but that would certainly be mine.
Hello, everyone. My name is Priscilla Grijalva, and I'm a public high school counselor at San Jacinto Leadership Academy, which is located in Southern California. And my walk-up song would be Bitty Bitty Bum Bum by Selena. Not only do I like to dance, but growing up in El Paso, which is a border town, I had the unforgettable experience of seeing Selena in concert before she became an icon at some of her local concerts. So it brings back joyful memories of my childhood and my community and the vibrant culture that shaped me. I love the energy of the song. As a first generation Latina and school counselor, the song reflects the heartbeat of my purpose to uplift, advocate, open doors for post-secondary opportunities, especially for students from marginalized communities and underrepresented backgrounds. So that is my song. As Selena once said, the impossible is possible if you believe in yourself and have dedication and pride.
Good morning. I'm Amy Hutton. I'm the Vice Chancellor for Enrollment Management at the University of Colorado Boulder in Boulder, Colorado. I am staring at the mountains outside my window. It's a beautiful day outside, a great time to be in Boulder. But there is a theme of New York City here, and that is my walk-up song is Defying Gravity. And it opened in 2003, which is when I was working on Broadway and living in New York City. But I love this song because, one, I can belt it at the top of my lungs. No one needs to hear that but my shower head. But I really love that it's about embracing your individuality in the face of adversity, really talking about everyone deserves the chance to fly. And that has been my commitment to public education for the last 20 years, is really giving every student the opportunity to pursue post-secondary education and ultimately fly.
Hi, everybody. I am Shannon Gunty. I am from Chicago, Illinois. I am a public school college counselor at Pritzker College Prep, a part of the Noble Street Charter Network. And my walkout song would be, I wanted to say Doechie's Anxiety, but that's a little too much right now. I'm actually thinking Tightrope by Janelle Monáe. I love Janelle Monáe, but also like at the state of thinking about our profession and the work that we do, I feel like Tightrope is very fitting, upbeat, and I love to dance too.
Hi everyone, Marie Nocella, she, her. I work at Sarah Lawrence College in the state of New York. And reflecting on how I grew up as a first generation student with no helpful guidance, I had no idea what I was doing in the college process. So when I reflect on my journey and celebrate where I am now in my life and in my career and being in this very space, in this town hall with all of you, the song I had to pick is Started from the Bottom by Drake.
Hi everyone, Megan O'Rourke. I'm from Providence College in Providence, Rhode Island, although I too am based in the Chicagoland area. Hello to Shannon. We're probably not too far away from each other. So I am our regional based in the Midwest. I cover the Midwest for PC. So I actually had the chance to pick a walk-up song when I served as APC coordinator, and I'm going to stick with that song because it's a classic. I'm going Bruce Springsteen, Thunder Road. My parents are big Bruce Springsteen fans, and I actually was able to see Bruce Springsteen in concert, I don't know, a handful of years ago. He's 75 and he can still rock out. So it was one of the best concerts I've ever seen. And Thunder Road is all about being able to like push forward and accept change and take all of that on. And I think it's even now still such a wonderful song and has a lot of great memories tied to it.
Wonderful. Thank you. I will not give y'all my walk-up song because I'll probably use it at conference at some point in time. So we're going to go ahead and jump in. And again, this is supposed to mimic a conversation that the board has when we meet in virtual spaces or in person. So what do you believe are the most important responsibilities of the NACAC board? And please use your unique skill set and experience to help you significantly contribute to your role as either chair-elect or board director. Whoever wants to start.
I'll hop in. I think one of the most important pieces of being on the board is being willing to listen and willing to not only just come in with your own set of experiences and ideas, but being willing to listen to those of others who are around the table. I also think that it's increasingly important. I think it's great the membership growth that the organization has seen, but I think with that also comes this ability to get sort of further and further from members. And so I think to provide ways in which members feel like they have ways in which to just be able to touch and feel and see things that might happen in areas and spaces that they're not privy to. Obviously, you can't disclose all those things, but there are certainly things and ideas that I think members would love to know about or hear about, to just be accessible to people, to members, I think is hugely important. And I think the other thing is to be really in a space where which you feel you're providing a safe space for the other members of the board, and that people feel like when we're together in spaces and places having meetings, that people can feel, that other board members feel really truly that it's a safe space to share their own thoughts and ideas, and not sort of be that those ideas are going to leave that space if they need to be private, that people feel comfortable, other board members feel comfortable being transparent as well.
Thanks.
I like to echo what Jonathan said regarding the responsibilities of the board. In my experience serving on a national school counseling board the past 3 years, I think it's also over not only an advisory board, but a sounding board, thought leadership group. And I was also thinking about the proposed bylaw amendment, which allowing board members to elect the chair-elect. I know it's something that some people may be unfamiliar with or uncomfortable with, But from my experience on a national board where this process was used, it worked well. It promoted shared responsibility and strengthened their leadership community continuity. So I believe it can contribute meaningfully in this capacity.
Thanks, Priscilla. Two of the things I was thinking about in terms of these responsibilities that I'm most excited for. Number one would be bringing a voice to the challenges and triumphs that our students are having, whether they're the college students, college admissions, or also the students that we serve. I think elevating that voice and the impact that our NACAC members have is incredibly important, especially as we venture into the strategic direction with the Access Center and continuing to expand access. And then I think the second thing is considering how are we, similar to what Jonathan said, expanding not only our base, but also diversifying the supports that we are providing to school counselors, to admissions officers, so that we can make sure we are building those strong connections while elevating those student stories. And that is what I've gotten really excited about in the as I've learned more and more about the new work of NACAC.
Thank you all. We're going to go ahead and move on to the next question. How do you envision serving as a NACAC leader during this unforeseen time of change? And provide an example of when you previously were part of a group engaging in some challenging conversations.
I'll kick us off. So I, at the University of Colorado Boulder, work very closely with our state and federal legislators. And so in this time of change, there's also a lot of opportunity for advocacy to really ensure that we're not only looking at the long-term supports for our students, but also the long-term profession and really higher education as a whole, because there's definitely risk to higher education with a lot of the proposed legislation. And so I'm really excited about the opportunity to serve potentially on the board to really be able to support the voice of NACAC and really prepare it for the future, make it sustainable, because the future of humanity is really dependent on education. And we have a real opportunity to advocate and push forward for the things that our students and our profession need.
Yeah,
I think, oh, go ahead, Marie.
Okay, thanks. I think the key to the question is serving as a leader, right? Not just coming in with an agenda and bulldozing everything else because you think you have the best idea. But, Jonathan mentioned listening, and, we're all coming from different spaces and different kind of institutions. We don't have all the answers. That's why there's a whole board. So really working together, being able to agree to disagree. We're not all going to think that a certain path is the right path. And I think as leaders, sometimes there's some give and take. You have to listen, you have to be able to compromise. And at the end of the day, whether you ultimately agree with a decision or not, you have to all be on the same page. And that's how you support a membership that also has a lot of different ideas and is coming from a lot of different places, especially with the uncertainty. Not all of our members are in spaces where they can speak freely. Not all of our members are working in institutions where they necessarily agree with what's going on or what's being placed upon them. So understanding and not just listening, but really understanding where people are coming from and working together, I think is going to be really, really important, especially in the next few years.
I think for me, one of the things when Heather, this idea of like what kinds of qualities would someone bring to the board, or like how do these pieces fit together? Like to me, those are two connected questions, because realistically, we can sort of predict what might happen. There's like lots of pathways and possibilities. Some of them are more terrible than others. And I think the board then has to find a way to be nimble in maybe pivoting from something that they had initially planned and trying to make sure that members stay at the forefront of their mind. This was many years ago, serving on the IACAC Illinois ACAC board, we had a discussion of like the mission statement, and we have to be able to serve our members so those members can serve their students. you can't have like a dual mission statement, right? We've got to do the step one to get to step two. And I think finding ways to ensure that we can pivot or flex or be nimble in the kinds of things that we're doing is important so that members feel like they are being listened to, that they are being taken care of, because I think mental health is going to be important for all of us as we navigate the coming few years. To me, that's going to be a really important piece to this. Jonathan and I served in the same president class. We have a little bit of, unfortunately, experience with COVID and lockdowns and not being able to host in-person events. And while it's not the same thing, there is that same level of like, okay, we're going to scrap what we thought we knew and we're going to start over and go fresh. So this idea of like, hey, we don't really need, we can't really be so focused on one thing or so set in our ways that like this is the answer, because at the point that we are at, we're going to have to find other answers or other ways to do things.
Yes. Thanks for saying that, Megan, because I think we've all in education faced the pandemic and what that meant in terms of being versatile and pivoting. I was thinking a lot about, especially working in a high school, and in our network, we have 17 high schools where through the pandemic, we were virtual for a year. And so college counseling virtual, anyone who did it knew that was very challenging. And we faced an identity crisis. And I think a lot of educational institutions face that coming out of the pandemic, and who we are and what we represent. And so with working through specific next steps on how to reaffirm who we are and what we represent, I think I developed a lot as a leader, and I'm sure you all did during that time. And especially now looking forward to NACAC, the culture of the board is such an integral piece in terms of defining this narrative of who we are and what we stand for. And I think what I'm grateful for is seeing these constant policy updates, just in terms of like, we are unapologetic in who we are and what we stand for, and going through these challenges we faced in the past. We're facing challenges now, but they're not insurmountable. We all can continue to work together, and that is done through that board culture and through creating the environment, the ecosystem necessary to work together and problem solve and be proactive, not just reactive.
Yeah. Jonathan, we're going to go ahead and move on to the next question. And now y'all can take a breather. But Shannon, thank you for saying that, because it kind of leads into the next question that I was going to ask Tahara as our chair-elect candidate. You'll be lucky to serve with some of these people on the screen as the chair-elect. So how do you plan to nurture your relationship with the CEO and other board members to ensure that the progress that they're talking about just previously is made on agreed goals and priorities?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So if I can break it down just a little bit, I think that, protection of the CEO is very important. And what I mean by protection is the CEO is the figurehead, the face of this association, of this organization. And for good or for bad, that person becomes the recipient of all the thoughts, the feelings, the attacks and praise, right? And so we need to do our part as a board to make sure that Angel feels supported and the team behind him working tirelessly for the association feels supported. And so the best way that I can do that is through meeting needs as they describe them. I think it's one thing for us to have our own ideas and ways of thinking about how best to support, but it's another to listen to the folks who are doing this every day on the ground and saying, this is what I need. And so I think it is making opportunities for that to happen. The other thing in terms of board director relationships, I think one of the best things is truly taking time to have individual conversations with people, to truly try to understand them as a person, then as a professional. What are their passions and motivations for this work? I think there is great synergy that happens from people working collaboratively in a room. I think it is completely different when you sit down and say, before our meeting starts, do you mind with us meeting early for coffee? just to chit chat and just find out about your journey. You may want to hear about kids. You may not want to hear about kids, but if that's important to that person, you're going to sit down, you're going to listen, and you're going to hear about their kids or their pets, or that their favorite band is New Kids on the Block, and be invested in learning more about that, right? So I think that personal relationships with people is so important. It doesn't mean that you will become best friends. It doesn't mean that you will develop this closeness. That would be great if it happens, right? But I do believe that is part of what is missing, and a lot of the things that are happening around us is this human to human personal relations. And so I think that that is so important. And I believe that I will take time to actually invest in people, and actually have them feel heard and seen and cared about, both as board members and our full-time staff and CEO. And one thing, if I just may add it into some questions that we asked earlier that I just think is so important to so many of the things that we discussed, is we can do none of the things that were mentioned by my wonderful colleagues on this call if the association doesn't exist. And so as a chair-elect, there are two things that are really at the forefront of my mind if I am honored to be given this position by our membership, and that is our financial health and wellness. For those of you all who were a part of the higher education community in the 2018 economic crisis, we saw the devastating impact it had across our industry and into our professional associations. And I was a member of our community then. And so I really had that on my mind going into this season and thinking about the mere existence of our organization. And then the second thing is, yes, we are advocates. Yes, we are here to do the work so that the practitioners can have the tools that they need to do the work. But we also have to be strategic about our existence and who we will be in community with to ensure that we can live to see another day. So I think that those two things are really at the forefront of my mind before we can even get into some of the things that we typically associate a NACAC with and the work that we're doing, because I think that it is just a completely different landscape in which we're operating. And so we have to come with a very different mindset.
Thank you, Tahira. Next question. So transparency and inclusiveness are core values of the NACAC board. How can NACAC continue to ensure the decisions are inclusive of different identities and perspectives while also speaking as a unified voice?
I mean, I think Tahira just said it. We can't forget the people. It at the end of the day, it's about the people who make up the organization. And we have to, no matter the size and scope of the organization, we have to continue to find ways to make certain that we hear from people. And I think not to forget that no matter who on this screen, becomes a member of the board, at the end of the day, we are also members too. We're members first, and we have to, I'm sure we all come with our own networks of people and experiences, and can really be committed to making certain that we hear from people before we make decisions. And I think one thing that I had to remember as an affiliate president is that sometimes what Jonathan Farrell, the person, would do is different than what Jonathan Farrell, the president of the organization, would do. And we have to although we are elected as people, we are elected to serve the organization. And I think we can't lose sight of that as we move through decision making.
I would echo that and also say that it's about listening to the members, but also using our members to hear the voices that are not present in the organization or that are not represented in the organization, and really creating the space and the opportunities for all of those voices to be heard, along with the intentionality of bringing those voices into the space to be heard and to have the encouragement to be recognized and understand that each person matters. But we are representing the broader voice. And so I think creating spaces where ideas can be heard, they can be iterated, thrown at a wall, and made better, ultimately is a way of transparency for the organization to build buy-in and create the best direction moving forward to ensure that long-term strategy.
Can I just say something really quickly, just very quickly about this? So words mean things. So equity and inclusion mean things. They have actual definitions and not just what they have a lot of in ways been hijacked and meant something different in today's day and age. But I would like to say equity and inclusion is everybody. It is every type of ideological thought and process. It is every type of belief system. It is every type of perspective and view and lived experience. It is not just the one that we believe as individuals, as Jonathan has said, maybe in our personal selves or even in our political selves or whatever we believe is the right way of doing things, right? It is bringing every perspective to the table and giving it true value and weight. And so I truly believe that one of the things that I would try to hold us all accountable to is the true definition of words, right? Not just when it feels good, not just when it is the right thing for us, but in the true essence of the words equity and inclusion. And I'm sorry, I know Marie wanted to say something. I apologize.
No, Tahira, that was amazing. So thank you for for jumping in. I was lucky enough to just have served on the NACAC ad hoc for transparency in our field. And we only had 6 months. There was so much to talk about in terms of transparency in our field. But the first thing that the co-chairs did was survey people, right? Because it wasn't just our voices in the room, it was everyone. And we didn't have a lot of public school representation in our group. So that's one of the groups that we reached out to. And we had a lot of recommendations. We submitted recommendations for NACAC, for the AP committee, and for institutions. And I'm really excited to see where that goes, right? There were so many great conversations about our field, about public opinion in education, about opportunity and belonging, because that's what we decided to call that focus. About cost, about requirements, about all of the things that people are confused about or don't understand, making sure our language makes sense and is easily understandable. So many things that we talked about over that 6-month period. I'm really excited that it got brought to the NACAC board, and whether I'm in the room this fall or not, really excited to see that focus on transparency moving forward for our members and ultimately really for our students.
I think also knowing like what's going on in the arena with, working with K through 12 public education and public school counselors, the admissions profession. The admissions profession is facing serious challenges, including a growing crisis in higher education, funding cuts to critical programs like TRIO, Full Ride Scholars, Emoja, and other programs that we're seeing. These cuts are widening opportunity gaps and disproportionately affecting our students who need support the most. So we're also navigating shifting national demographics along with policies that have led to decline in international student enrollment, as we're seeing, and harmful targeting of undocumented and mixed families. These challenges are not just policy issues, they're human ones. So despite all this, we have the opportunity, and NACAC's doing a great job. They're very courageous and bold. And we also have a responsibility as a collective voice to move us forward. NACAC must continue to lead boldly, advocating for equitable access, inclusive policy, and protection of our students' rights to pursue higher education.
Thank you, Priscilla, for naming that, especially thinking about the public school context. In terms of inclusion, I wouldn't actually be here if it weren't for an admissions representative reaching out and saying, I think this might be an opportunity for you. When I first started with NACAC back in 2013, in terms of going to my first conference, I didn't necessarily feel like the students that I served that I could always find my place in terms of supports. I have 50% mixed status families on my caseload. Our students are 90% free and reduced lunch. And it didn't always feel like things were oriented towards that group of students. And over the years, I've seen a huge shift in this. And just having someone step up and say, you know what, like this could be an opportunity that would allow your student voice, your family voice, the experience of immigrant families in Chicago to be elevated. Really, it meant a lot to me. It felt very special that would be that level of inclusiveness has shifted and evolved over time. I think we still have work to do. I recognize like I have a very specific context, and I'm excited and eager to learn from other people and the challenges they're facing, because one of my mentors said, like, we're all behind the desk. We're all doing this work. It may look different, but we're facing some similar and different challenges that we can problem solve together.
Perfect, thank you. So I'm gonna kick off this question with Megan, if you don't mind answering. Can you describe a time when you led or contributed to strategic conversations around the financial stewardship of an organization, particularly in relation to philanthropic efforts?
So I served as president of the Illinois Association for College Admission Counseling 2019 to 2021, I believe. And at the time, my treasurer and I, his name is Eric Ruiz, shout out to him, we spent a lot of time working through our budget and trying to get ICAC to a place where the staff members in ICAC, there was about 4 of them, plus myself and him, could reasonably understand like the full fiscal picture of the organization. Because I think one of the things that we struggled with when we both came into our roles was day to day we could move through operationally, but I think he and I both agreed. And for my sake, I had never served as treasurer before serving as president, and that is like a huge thing that I wanted to know more about. So just understanding the ins and outs of some of the surplus money that we had and how much money we had saved and put away just in case, and what our committees actually needed in terms of like day to day, like what kinds of things do you want to do? What kinds of challenges do you want to take on? What kinds of goals do you have for yourselves? And thinking about our mission and kind of the vision and plan for the organization and how these things align, working with committees to really understand like, hey, this is the money that we have for you. We can make adjustments if needed as we go through this time together. But it's important that we think about how we're using our resources in a strategic way, and that we're not just saying, oh, let's just spend money because there's this like extra pool of money just sitting there for us to utilize, right? And so this is something that I wish admission offices especially could do, is help those kind of moving up the rank, because this was really like my first introduction into this, is working way more strategically with a budget and having our committees understand where we were more realistically, and then how to deal with that so that each group could still accomplish what they wanted and still be good stewards of the resources through the membership dollars that the different schools and organizations were paying into ICAC. So that's the big example.
So this is something I do every day as part of my job at the University of Colorado Boulder. I'm one of 10 people that we meet daily to talk about whatever's happening in the federal legislation, what's happening with grant cancellations, changes to the Title IV funding. I oversee financial aid as one of my areas, and trying to figure out what the prioritization strategy should be across the institution, as we're seeing declines in international students, declines in doctoral students due to the federal landscape and the research grant cancellations, but also preparing for the long-term health for our students. What are we able to cover for them if work study or Pell changes? What are we able to do for continuity of the education of our students, for the continuation of research and innovation? So all of these things really intersect to create a very complicated place that we have to develop the strategy for. And so doing that at a large public institution is really a great preparatory ground for doing this for a national association as well, because while NACAC is focused on college admission counseling, it doesn't happen in isolation. And so we need to be working with our fellow organizations that really will be able to advocate better and support better if we're working together, along with bringing the memberships together.
I would just add, I was for about 5 years, I was fortunate to chair the annual conference for the Southern Association. And while that was an enormous revenue generator, it was also our biggest expenditure. And so you talked a little bit about the philanthropy part of it. I spent a great bit of time really trying to forge relationships with partners outside of the organization, but who were aligned to figure out ways in which they could partner with us to help us to make that that better. And what I mean by that is that yes, we think of the annual conference as the annual conference, but in that case, in our scenario, what we also wanted to do was to make that experience one that could fund some other things that were not necessarily tied to the conference, and to fund some other programs. And so I think really finding other organizations to partner and align with you to help push your own mission and programs forward that might not be directly tied to one specific thing, but to help them see the value in other ways to help, I found very useful as well.
I would have to say, serving on a National School Counseling Board, I've had the opportunity to review financial reports and make sure as a team we are financially responsible. Also at my school level, I partnered with our college and military representatives in helping get resources for our school and our students and our community, such as donations and grants and scholarships that will really help out our students. And all that on the national and the local level, I've had that experience with philanthropy and also serving financial responsibility.
In thinking about this in terms of budget, while I have managed a series of budgets, I was an assistant principal for a period of time and focused on our college counseling budget, and I manage a summer pre-college program where we send kids all over the United States, which is really awesome. But I think a lot on the philanthropic side. I know Megan knows this, but the Chicago landscape is a wild place in terms of education, K through 12, especially budget right now. But more specifically, when I was at Chicago Bulls College Prep, we had a series of unfortunate violence in our school community that made headlines, and that can very negatively impact that your school, obviously. And my students and I got together and we decided to shift the narrative. And from doing that, they actually ended up making headlines based on their college acceptances and decisions, we formed partnerships with NPR, WBEZ, and WGN, and it actually resulted in a partnership with Herendorf Foundation that led to $40,000 scholarships for students a year. And so just thinking about the ways in which controlling the narrative, changing up that narrative in philanthropic work is incredibly important, and I think something we should continue to consider in NACAC about the impact of the work and how we're showcasing that.
I think everything's great when you pass a balanced budget and you have this great plan for the next year in December of 2019. And then, okay, I'm going to run for president-elect February 2020, everything's fine. March 2020, everything's not fine. And, a 3-year president, Megan was our APC coordinator, being our cheerleader, as we all, as a president's class, stepped into this role of, oh my goodness, what do we do? Do we have any money? Can we do anything. My president's class, we called ourselves Flex, right? Because we have to be flexible, but we also wanted to show strength together. And how do we pivot when we don't have conferences, when we're not bringing in money, when we don't want our affiliates to go up in smoke because we have no idea what's coming. And we certainly had no idea how long financial things were going to last, were going to change. So being part of a lot of conversations of, can we have this programming in a different way? How are we still going to make money so that we can pay our staff, our insurance, their operating costs to stay afloat? So being creative sometimes in different ways to make sure that at the end of the day, and Tahira said this, that the organization still exists. Really difficult conversations, but I think at the end of it, you're really proud of what you can accomplish as a team.
Thank you all for that. This next question, I'm going to ask Tahira to answer first, and then we'll bounce around for anybody else if they have any contributions. So how do you navigate the balance between maintaining political neutrality and engaging in meaningful advocacy, particularly when you're representing an organization that must remain nonpartisan? Tahira, you get this one first.
Yeah, this is a great question, and I'm not going to put my legal hat on, although I really, really want to. Maybe I will just a little bit. First, you look at your nonprofit status and look at those regulations very carefully and toe that line. So you are not getting unnecessary attention and spotlight. But honestly, I think one of the greatest things is in our membership, because we are a diverse group of members, we represent so many different voices, points of view, political views, ideological views. And so there's a lot of, for lack of a better word, protection and richness in that for us, because we advocate for what is right for our profession and practitioners to be equipped with, not particularly views or stances or political statements. And so, a couple years ago when I was on the board did a very courageous thing, which I've always known it to do, and said, this is when NACAC is going to make statements and speak, and when we are not, for the protection of our members, for the protection of our organization, and because of what we believe is right for our association. And so I think that one of the greatest things in political neutrality is that you can, not offend, you can not speak, you aren't really stepping on toes. So, you're remaining neutral, you're staying in that space. The danger is that people sometimes don't feel as if their voice is being heard or that their action is taking on. Well, how do you work to mitigate that and mediate that when members are feeling forgotten or not thought about? And that is being transparent and the honesty and the reality of when you can and cannot speak and engage. I think people are great and understand that not every fight is our fight to fight. Not every battle we can be a part of. Not every item or issue is going to be appropriate for us to put our weight behind, because you can be jack of all trades or a master of none. We have to be very thoughtful and strategic and deliberate of when we want to yield our power, because we are powerful. We just have to be very deliberate about when we yield that.
I think I obviously agree, Tahira, you're the best, obviously, and always have such thoughtful things to say. I think for me, the only other thing that I would add here is this idea of like the transformative power of education should be accessible to all, is something that sticks with me, is part of the vision of NACAC, and I think is the important thing for us to kind of keep at the forefront of our minds, like making sure that we are taking care of students so students have whatever their best post-secondary option is. And the way that we do that is by supporting our members as we can provide them opportunities for advocacy, for education, to build community, both at a national level and hopefully and continuing ways through like the SIG groups and like those smaller contingencies of members, like the ability to continue all of those ways in which members can access one another so that they can utilize the ways in which NACAC can support them as they do the good work of making sure that education is accessible to all.
I think something that I try to keep in mind is talking about the issues and what we stand for, right? We support access to education rather than getting into a political discussion about the people or the policies that we're against. And I think that if you're speaking from, I believe in this because it's a lot easier to kind of toe that line and not get into a place where we're going to get in trouble talking about politics, but really focusing on the issues. We're supporting education and we're supporting access to education.
I do just want to say quickly, though, that just because the organization itself will not stand, to Hira's point, every fight is not our fight. There's still something to be said about, even if the organization is not gonna, stand to make a statement about something, there are people in the organization who might be impacted by things, and that doesn't stop us as people from reaching out. If I know Priscilla or Tahira or Amy are personally impacted by something that maybe the organization isn't going to stand for, there's still something to be said about me reaching out to that person to say, hey, I know that this is impacting you. I want to know that I see you. I think that there's still power in that connection.
I think this
Thanks.
also, sorry.
Go ahead, Shannon.
I
We'll
think
wrap
this-
with you and go ahead.
I'll be quick. Yeah. I think this goes back to the inclusiveness question and the transparency, but just naming too. I'm from Iowa. I lived in Mississippi. I've been across a variety of different political ideologies in terms of friend groups. I think being curious, asking questions, listening, and yeah, continuing to ask questions. People believe the things they believe because they have certain experiences. And it's important that we're continuing to listen and ask those questions and not just make assumptions as a board, and then also just anytime we're interacting with any of our members.
Thank you for that. So I'm going to jump into our last question. And I think it's an appropriate one as well. With the rapidly evolving landscape of college admission in our profession, what are emerging trends or practices that you see that concern you the most? And how can NACAC ensure that student access remains at the center of its work in its response to these changes?
I'll kick us off. I think one of the biggest concerns that I have right now is the Title IV funding proposals that could impact our most disadvantaged students, especially those financially disadvantaged, that it would be very difficult for not only these students to attend college, but to ensure that institutions can continue to support them in ways that maintain that opportunity for students. And so that's definitely one of the major concerns for me right now, is with all of the questions of the value of higher education, how are we providing the value and demonstrating that in a way that showcases the importance of higher education, the research, the innovation, the opportunity, the economic mobility that comes through higher education, that allows the future of humanity to continue to grow and become something better than any of us could ever imagine, because we're doing this together. And so those challenges around the value, the financial support, canceling things like TRIO definitely concern me and are something that we're really strategically thinking about. And we need a lot of voices at the table to really ensure that whatever direction we're moving forward, both as NACAC and as the broader educational community, are going to be moving in the right direction that's best for our students.
And oh, sorry. Oh, so go ahead, Priscilla, go ahead.
Okay, I was just going to say, just seeing our Latin community being attacked, and also as a Latina, I bring both that lived experience and a strong understanding of the urgent need to protect and uplift our communities that are being targeted by current policies. Also, the erosion of LGBTQIA rights and women's rights. There's so much to list. I don't think I can list them all, but I think you guys have touched on a lot of them.
Thank you for that, Priscilla. And this is truly like human and heart-centered work that we are engaged in, and I appreciate you bringing that. The one thing I was going to say is that our conversation has focused a lot around, and rightfully so, the issues that our domestic U.S.-based students are feeling and we as practitioners are feeling. But I did want to bring into the space the global community that we represent. And although we are certainly have a lot of fires to put out here in our own United States, there is a global community also of students and practitioners that we are responsible for supporting. And NACAC as an association cannot do it all on its own, which is why I think it's so powerful that we have so many partner professional associations that we can be reaching and working with as part of the Washington Secretariat, as part of a global international community of education advocacy associations to support a wide range of student issues and concerns that we are just at the tip of the iceberg of, and just thinking about. And so I just wanted to introduce in this space all of the student issues and concerns that we haven't even been able to touch on yet.
I think for me, there's a lot that keeps me up at night, especially as of late. Many of them have already been mentioned. I think one thing that is a little off of exactly what we're talking about, but something that I've been trying to do more reading and researching about is the use of technology and the way that it could disrupt and is already disrupting both students' academic experiences in high school and then subsequently in college. I think AI has the potential to be a good tool or resource for students, but I think realistically, I'm not sure that that's exactly how it's being utilized. And I think this is something that we've started to touch on. There's more sessions at conferences, not just here in the Midwest, but at NACAC and with other organizations about how to use it. And I think that's part of it, but it's also ensuring that students, build their critical thinking skills and their problem solving skills so that they can go out and understand what's happening and how they can think about ways in which that they can contribute to their communities in a really meaningful way. But ditto to all of the things that have already been mentioned, because I feel like at this point there's a pretty long list.
Yes, I just was going to add in my experiences, and we've just discussed this across NACAC before, but there's growing societal messages that college is not the way. There are you should explore other pathways. And while I am always open with all of my students about it's not my job to choose, it's my job to believe that you can do this. I believe that messaging is incredibly harmful, especially to our low income first generation Black and Brown students in Chicago. And so I think we have a lot of work to do to continue to shift that message, and also focusing on that college can be affordable and it can be an option, because there is so much messaging and noise around the cost of college. And what I do with my team is we're working constantly on myth busting, dispelling those myths, and making sure that they know all the options. We have all the data to support them, and seeing this happen and have this proof positive for them. So that's something we're continuing to combat each day.
And I would just say quickly, I think that the weaponization of words and the penalization of people and ideas is a really dangerous place to be. And it's really important to keep our eyes on that.
I think one of my biggest concerns when there's so many, right, is a loss of hope. I think students losing hope, not seeing a path forward, given whatever options they may or may not think that they have. But our profession, right? It's a stressful space to work in this space right now. And great people that do great work losing hope and giving up and finding other professions. I think that's why the affiliates and why NACAC is so important right now, because we have to support each other. We have to give each other space to vent or to come up with ideas, not just complain, but to say that this is how maybe you could work with that student or the situation. But we need to support each other and have hope, because without that, we're not going to fight, and we're not going to move forward as an organization or as individuals. So I think we all need to really band together and continue to do the work and come up with the ideas to figure out how we're going to do that work.
Well, I want to thank you.
Oh, Angelica, I was going to say just real quick, like I love how NACAC's doing the gratitude shout outs. So as we're going through these challenging times, you know, helping with the gratitude has really been, I'm grateful for the thing that you're doing with those gratitude shout outs and your newsletters and all that. So thank you.
Well, thank you for that. I want to thank you all for joining us today and answering these questions. You all did amazing. So I'm going to turn it over to Heather so she can do the last bit of logistics and let our members know the next steps.
I echo what Angelica said. Thank you, nominees. This was a fantastic many conversations about some really important topics. You all did a wonderful job. Thank you to our members who are watching this. I also encourage you to view the nominee videos that are currently on NACAC's website. And then coming in July next month, there will be a written statement that the nominees will be providing as well. And all that is available on NACAC's website. So thank you again, nominees. Thank you, Angelica, for doing an excellent job moderating. This, as a reminder, the annual member vote will launch on July 16th. There's additional information on NACAC's website. Until then, thank you all. Have a good rest of your day.
Bye. Thank you.